Hey everybody, this is Mr. Mobbin coming at you with another APUSH video. Today we're taking a look at topic 8.11, the Civil Rights Movement expands. And previously in this unit we've been taking a deep look at the history of the modern civil rights movement for African Americans. And today we're going to be shifting gears and taking a look at some additional civil rights movements after World War II for other minority groups. And note, many of these groups that we are going to be taking a look at in this video and then the next, regarding civil rights for women, Latinos, Native Americans, the LGBTQ community, etc., are all going to be heavily influenced by the foundations set by the African American civil rights movement. So, with that being said, let's start off today by taking a look at what's going to be known as the women's movement, getting into the 1960s and 70s. Now, to provide a little bit of context for what this movement is going to be inspired by, you got to understand that, despite the fact that after World War II, there's going to be a resurgence in conservatism, especially by the 1950s. There's going to be, once again, more of, more social pressure for women to revert back to that more traditional role as wife and mother, and have the husband be the sole breadwinner of the family. Women making sure to take care of all those domestic responsibilities. Certainly by far the junior partner in a marriage dynamic, things like that. But despite that, there are going to be some noticeable things that are going to be changing. Despite intense social pressure to maintain that traditional role, more women are working outside the home than we saw, for example, 50 years earlier. And this is going to be especially important after World War II. More and more women are going to be getting a college degree, and that's going to be very significant because when we're talking about obtaining those college degrees, you're not going to typically go through the time and the trouble and the cost and all of that to get a college degree and then not try to use that degree for some sort of a career path. And as we get into the 1960s, more and more women are going to be using those college degrees to enter into the workforce, going into white-collar jobs that have historically been dominated by men. Note also that the women's movement is going to be inspired, as I mentioned previously, by the African American civil rights movement. The idea that through the formation of interest groups, through a willingness to file lawsuits, protest marches, lobbying members of governments, etc., that you can affect change. And that's going to be very, very significant. In fact, we're going to talk about how the Civil Rights Act of '64 is going to be an important connection between those movements. Something else that is also going to be, significant as part of the women's rights movement is the burgeoning sexual revolution that is going to be taking place in the 1960s. One of those important milestones in that period is the access to what's going to be known as the pill, the birth control pill. It's going to come out in the early 1960s, and that's going to revolutionize many thoughts, values with regards to sex, especially premarital sex, which then also is going to lead to other additional questions in terms of reproductive rights for women. And so what the pill does is give women more power over their own reproductive rights, and that's going to lead to further demands for more equality with regards to reproduction. So with that being said, let's talk about the impact of one of these early activists for women's rights, and that's going to be Betty Friedan, pictured right here. In many respects, Friedan is going to embody what it's like to be a woman of the 1950s into the early 60s. Friedan was part of that generation that was told, as a woman, your main job is to find a good man, a man that's going to financially take care of you and your children. You should get married young, start having children right away, and maintain that traditional domestic role in the family. And she does this. And as she goes through, her young life into the 1950s, and yes, I mean, she loves her husband, she loves her children, all of this, but she does find that something is missing, something is lacking. And she comes to the conclusion that what is lacking is that she as a woman has been pigeonholed into a responsibility, though that yes, she enjoys once again being a wife and mother. She feels that that's not the only capabilities that she has, and that she shouldn't be as a woman limited to that role. And this is going to be the basis for what's going to be a seminal work in the fight for women's rights, and that's going to be known as the feminine mystique. And what this is going to start to galvanize is the idea that women should be able to have not just the opportunity to be a wife and mother, but to also have a valued career outside of the home, a career that's fulfilling for women. Central to the argument is that unlike men who've never had to answer this question, women have had to make a decision: do you want to be a wife and mother, or do you want to have a career? Her argument is that men don't have to answer that question; they can be both, and it's never questioned at all. So why should it be that way for women? So what this is going to start to do is galvanize women to start talking about this lack of equity in their role in not just a marriage, but also in the workforce. Now, speaking of the workforce, women are going to be facing tremendous challenges there. That's going to include, things such as sexual harassment, failure to get hired or get promotions out of, fear that a woman might, get pregnant and then ask for, God forbid, maternity leave and something along those lines. But also, very, very important issue would be regarding pay, and the fact that women were getting a fraction of what men were getting paid for the same job, same educational level, same amount of experience. We will see an early success with the passage of the Equal Pay Act in 1963, which will allow women to file lawsuits suing companies that if they can prove that they have been discriminated in terms of pay. Now, at the time, this is an important milestone, but as we'll see, later in history, it's going to come with some limitations. Basically, you can only sue for lost wages or shortened wages within a very limited time frame. It's usually, just a couple of weeks. And if you can't prove within those couple of weeks, then you lose out on any opportunity to recoup that lost money. And that's a problem because most people in the private sector don't know what other people are making in their company. So it becomes very difficult to find out or to be able to prove that you are being paid unequally. Now, another important milestone for the women's rights movement is the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 itself. Now, a lot of times folks don't connect the Civil Rights Act to women's rights, but it is. When the Civil Rights Act is passed in 1964, it's not just providing protection in terms of hiring based on race and ethnicity and religion, country of origin, etc., but it also includes sex. So what this law is saying is that you cannot deny a woman a job simply because she's a woman. And that's going to be very significant. Once again, it kind of gets overshadowed with other things, but that is going to be an important foundation for other milestones for equity. Now, with the popularity of the feminine mystique by Betty Friedan, there's going to be a growth of what we call support groups, that more and more women are coming out and discussing with one another, the challenge that they face as a modern woman in terms of, their junior role in a marriage, social pressures to stay home and be domestic, trying to, gain respect and equity in the business world, all those kinds of things. And what we're starting to see happening as this support group movement grows through the early to mid 1960s is that more and more women are finding connection in the sense that, as women, we're all, finding the same challenges, the same issues, the same, problems that are going on. And what this does is kind of bring together women to this common idea that women have a tremendous amount of shared interests that have to be addressed. And that's going to lead to the creation of NOW, the National Organization for Women. And once again, be aware when we talk about the civil rights movement for all of these various groups, that forming interest groups is going to be important, and that's significant because folks form interest groups because there's generally a sense that government maybe is not paying attention to their needs, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's going to be significant moving forward. Still today, NOW is the most powerful and influential women's rights interest group in America. Now, as we go through the late 60s and then into the early 1970s, NOW is going to be making all sorts of demands for equity for women, equity in terms of reproductive rights, equity in terms of pay and promotions in the business world, trying to gain equal access for education, trying to eliminate sexual harassment and sexual objectification of women in society, access to daycare for their children, provided assistance from the government, all equal rights with regards to divorce and inheritance and custody for children in certain cases. So there's a litany of issues that women are going to be fighting for. Now, as we get into the early 1970s, one of the most significant of these achievements is going to be the passage of Title IX. Now, traditionally as a woman, you were either socially coerced or by law or by rules denied equal access to education. So like traditionally back in the 1950s, if you were a young woman that was wanting to take physics and calculus, your guidance counselor would probably discourage you from taking those classes because why would you need those classes if you're going to be a mom and a wife? Furthermore, it was against the rules in many places for a young woman that may have an interest in auto shop or metal shop to take those kinds of courses because the attitude was, well, those are men's jobs, those are men's fields that a woman would not need to take such classes. And that's going to be, a problem. Another important issue for women is getting equal access to admissions into colleges, getting college scholarships, and this is all going to lead to the passage of what's called Title IX. Title IX in 1972 is an addition to the Civil Rights Amendment of 1964, which is going to stipulate that now all public schools, K through 12 and at the university level, must provide equal access to education regardless of sex, regardless of gender. So what that means today is that as a female student in high school and college, you can take any class that a guy can, and vice versa. So that's going to be significant. This is going to help to propel a lot of women into blue-collar fields, be it as a mechanic, a welder, carpentry, you name it, that had been seen as traditionally male. But for most folks, when they think of Title IX, they think of it at the collegiate level, and not just with regards to academic opportunities, but especially regarding athletics. You got to remember traditionally that women's athletics at the collegiate level was nearly, not to be found. And that's going to be significant because in the world of athletics, traditionally that was a route for some male students to get a scholarship for college. But for women, that was pretty much non-existent, even with sports, those few sports that maybe existed for women. Well, Title IX is going to stipulate that colleges, just like high schools, are going to have to offer the same amount of athletic opportunities for women as for men. And that is also going to include scholarship opportunities. And because of Title IX in the last 50-odd years, you have seen women, thousands and thousands of women, that would normally not have the opportunity to go to college, get that education, get that degree, but now are going to be able to. And in the process, it starts to spark more of a sense of respect for women in athletics. I especially find that interesting because, right now as I'm filming this is the middle of March Madness, and the idea that, women's college basketball is now very, very popular. And that is absolutely the result of respect given to it via Title IX. Women getting those college scholarships, it validates what women do. It starts to get more attention in the media. You start to see more fan attendance, which drives in more revenue, which provides more respect. The fact that we have a WNBA exists because of the realities of Title IX. And note, this is also going to encourage women to getting into refereeing roles. Today you now see women that are refs, and not just women's sports, but men's sports as well, like the NBA Finals and the Super Bowl and things like that. So Title IX is going to be a tremendous milestone in the history of women gaining equal opportunity inside the classroom and outside. All right, we're going to go ahead and leave it there for now. We'll come back to this a little bit later. See you next time.